any vaccine that is proposed for their children, together with a reminder that they have the right to decline any of them. It was meant to respect their role in parenting. The same people who fought against that small bit of notice to parents, designed not to settle the vaccine debate, but to help parents be better informed for the sake of their children and family, and to provide an opening to discussion with the doctor, are still fighting parental rights today. Principally, they are doctors who take the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm. 3 arguments my disclosure bill got from doctors were the following. 1, they don't have time to talk to parents because they have too many children to vaccinate. They don't have time, was the argument against that bill. Number 2, they really privately did, they didn't say it publicly, but privately, they really couldn't explain the ingredients themselves. They didn't know what they did or what they meant. So they couldn't answer the questions. And 3, they said that giving parents the list of ingredients amounted to scare tactics. We were just trying to scare parents into not vaccinating. So with those questions, they recognized that the vaccines are scary. They admitted they don't have all the answers, but they also refused to recognize the many professional studies that raised doubts. I tried to introduce Ginger to one of the doctors in the legislature who wanted to talk to her, but she did not want to listen to her. She did not want to accept the studies that Ginger offered. So, doctors should be better informed. I urge you to support that concept. In the interest of respecting the rights of parents, the professionalism of medical caregivers, and the real evidence that vaccines can cause some people harm, please do not take away the civil and moral rights and duties of parents in raising their children. Please apply the precautionary principle of leading with caution and not decide for parents what even their doctors cannot explain, and for which they will not accept financial liability for forcing. When there are those who must not be vaccinated, consider that it does not make sense to force vaccinations on anyone else. The herd mentality that paints every child with the same brush threatens collateral damage for which no governmental or professional agency is taking responsibility. Please fix that part first and pass this bill, and continue to respect parental rights and responsibilities as they seek the best care for their children. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions if you like. Very simple.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you for your testimony. Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Good evening, Senator Brakey, Representative Patine, and members of the committee. My name is Jody O'Connell, and I'm from Berwick, Foxcroft. My daughter's name is Jillian. She was born on September 22nd, 2005. She was a normally developing infant per all doctor observations, had met all milestones, responded to her name, had normal eye contact, good sleep habits, good eating habits, smiled upon request, and had the beginnings of rudimentary language. She was given MMR, varicella, Hep A, and Prevnar vaccines at 12 months of age. Jillian regressed behaviorally within weeks, screaming, not sleeping, agitated, and had a marked personality change. She was given DTaP and HIV at 15 months. By 17 months of age, she had no eye contact, no words, was not sleeping, was not responding to her name, exhibited constant screaming, flapping, and spinning. We've spent the last 6 years putting the pieces of Jillian's puzzle together with the help of several board-certified physicians and practitioners from all across the country. Subsequent medical testing has revealed no antibodies, immunity, developed to polio, varicella, tetanus, or pertussis, despite being fully vaccinated per the CDC schedule. Abnormally high antibodies to measles, mumps, and especially rubella. Heavy metal toxic, to include mercury and aluminum. She has mitochondrial dysfunction, bowel disorders, gut dysbiosis, IgG and IgE food allergies and intolerances, sensory integration disorder, apraxia, severe vitamin deficiencies, metabolic dysfunction, malabsorption issues, gut inflammation, severe methylation mutation, pandus, and lymphoid nodular hyperplasia in her intestinal tract. She is nonverbal. She is labeled developmentally disabled. Again, by all physicians' accounts, several of them in the same practice, Jillian was a typically developing infant who presented with none of these health issues prior to her 12-month round of vaccination. Jillian's story is not unique. You've been hearing stories of children regressing in health and development after vaccination for over 25 years, and you will keep hearing them because it's the truth. Her father and I were never informed of the serious risks of vaccination. We were never informed of the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which has paid out over $3 billion for vaccine injuries and deaths since the late 1980s. We were never informed that vaccine manufacturers are not financially liable for vaccine injuries. We were never given the package inserts to vaccines. We were never given true and informed consent. Please vote yes on LD 10.7 and 6 and ensure that Maine families have access to true and informed consent regarding vaccination and a place to go when it all goes wrong and there's nobody there for you. So they're not alone, because we've been alone for the past 8 years. Bankrupt, with a very, very sick child and nobody to turn to. My daughter's here today. She's been here all day. I wanted you to go and introduce yourselves, but I know it's too late. We have to leave because she's about to be done. But she's done a remarkable job today. And I'm very proud of her. And thank you for listening. And please remember her when you cast your votes.
She has done a remarkable job. I've seen her over there the whole time. And
Thank you.
So, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions. Thank you very much. Additional testimony. Well, Representative Sanderson.
Well, I don't have a question, but I want to just acknowledge you never know when you're going to run into somebody, and who would know that today my son's middle school wrestling coach testified, and as did his wife just testified. So it's nice to see him.
Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Good evening, Senator Brakey, Representative Katine, and members of the committee. Thank you for listening to all these testimonies and being here. There are many, many points that I can say what she said, and I will do that. There's a lot of points that people have made. One of the points that I want to make or reiterate is the dropping off the cliff. When my daughter started to have the problems that I expressed to you earlier in the day, not only did I drop off the cliff, but somebody has been beating me with a stick all the time I've been falling. You're looking too hard. You're doing too much research. There's really nothing wrong with that child. If you would just let her be, she would be fine. I'm sorry, but those things aren't the truth. And the first step to change is awareness. You cannot change if you're not aware. And we have a sacred cow here. Boy, do I wish I could come here and say, who the heck would not want a little shot that I could give my child that would protect her from tetanus or mumps or meningitis? Man, that's really cool. I don't have the option to do that with my child. And not only that, but the doctors who saw her when she first was injured didn't even realize it was happening. Now, what I want to tell you is something that I think is very important to notice. This bill will create a way to educate doctors. We left our pediatrician at 2 months and went back to my general practitioner. She was appalled by the condition of my baby. She spent over 2 hours with me, and she looked at me that day and said, oh my God, this child's going to have a long road. And a long road is what we've had. But there was a bright spot. Some of the same people in this room organized a workshop called Bridging the Gap. And I don't remember what year it was, but what I do remember, it was bringing these alternative practitioners, who, by the way, are the only ones that would listen to me, and more traditional practitioners together in a room. I invited that doctor to my doctor to that conference, and we drove down and we both listened. And on the way home, she said to me, a mother who had almost lost her child to meningitis and begged me to get the vaccine, I see why vaccines would not be good for Emma. Education will help. We have a sacred cow here, and we have doctors who really, really, really believe in the vaccine system. I'm not anti-vaccine, but we have to start to realize that it's causing damage. Be able to identify that and be able to give parents a place to go. Parents like me, we're broke, we're desperate, and we have nowhere to turn, and no help is available. I missed that window. There's nothing I can do. Education is key, and support is key, and I think that this can do it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, additional testimony in support of this bill.
Hi there, my name's Shannon Johnson. I'm sorry I don't have anything. I didn't want to talk today because everyone else has everything to say, but I realize I'm probably the only person in the room that will be back on Friday to talk to you about a bill on restraint seclusion, because I have a 20-year-old son with autism, and I won't go into it because I'll tell you more on Friday, but when we don't protect our children and they get the diagnosis of autism, when they get sick and you go to the ER, they send them to the psych ward. That's what happened to my son. And as a result, he was restrained over 1,000 times, was injured so badly that he had to go to Maine for surgery. I'm only telling you this because let's stop this bombardment of creating an atmosphere where our children are getting sick and getting a label of autism so then they can never get better. I don't want anyone to go through what my son's been through. I've seen a lot of sick autistic children on a psych ward not getting any help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions. Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Hello, Senator Reiki and Representative in the committee. I spoke before about my son, and his name's Aaron, by the way. And Jillian's mom explained in detail what my son has, a lot. Me and my husband have spent over $50,000 out of pocket just to heal our son. So I support this bill because if we would have had a channel to come to, that would have been fantastic. That's it.
Thank you. You get the award short so far on this bill. You want a cupcake? Feel free. Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Hello, thank you everybody on the committee for sticking with us for a long day. My name is Natasha Suleman. I'm from Gorham. I'd like to give you my testimony in support of this measure. As has been said, when this happens to your child, there is nowhere to go. Nowhere. And as I alluded to, I have, in my story, I didn't say we had two pediatricians, one who retired and then one who took over. And the one who took over is trying everything to help my child have better health. And in fact, the first time I saw him, I said, you know what? My kid has asthma, weeping eczema, allergies. You know what? He's sick. And I don't know how you feel about vaccines, but we're not going to have that discussion until you can help me get my child healthy again. And he doesn't even know what to do. There's nowhere for physicians to go to find this information. So, you know, if we would have had an office like this that says, you know, here's a doctor who has that information, I could connect the two physicians together. There's just got to be more for families and for doctors than just saying, too bad. Because right now, like has been said, I lost the window, and everybody sitting in this room will be paying for my son's health care for the rest of his life. And it shouldn't be that way, because if we would have known what to do when his injuries happened, he might be speaking right now. And I may not have bite marks. I may not have to worry about getting unbreakable glass in his windows. I may not have to lock him in his room every night for fear that he's going to hurt himself. There are so many things that we're paying for because we trusted in the system, and I think this is a really great step forward in giving parents and doctors a new resource. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no questions. Thank you
Thank you very much.
Additional testimony in support of this bill.
I've been up here before today. Thank you again for listening. The hallmark of a genetics condition is a constant rate of incidence.
Could you introduce yourself again?
Jerry Silver from East Waterboro. Constant rate of incidence. The hallmark of a disease is a changing rate of incidence. We've had a changing rate for 30 years. And the consequence of that, very much, is that it's been ignored. If you have a changing rate, you need to look at the vectors of what are causing the disease, because it is a disease. Psychiatric hospitals. I told you the last time what happened to my boy. 132 hours being awake out of 137, violent behavior, bordered on psychosis. It's not fun. It's not useful. I agree with all previous speakers. I'm very much in support of this bill. There's got to be information flow, and we haven't had it. I've spoken to that point on several occasions. Thank you for listening again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional testimony in support of this bill?
Good evening. At this point, Senator Brakey, Representative Tatine, and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. Again, my name is Holly Hagen-Austin, and I'm from Rangeley, Maine. And you have my testimony all together from earlier. I'm surprised we got this far today. So thank you for sticking around in here. I'm going to actually go away with, I'm just going to talk from the point of view of a mother who is in the system fighting for my son's rights. I vaccinated. I did what I was recommended to do. I took my child in. Every time we vaccinated, he had something that got worse. His story is actually attached at the very end, and it's written very medically because that's what happened. You have to kind of look at what went on. There were many things that were signs that my son should not be vaccinated further. And he had, at 6 months of age, his 6-month vaccines, took him in had multiple vaccines, took him home within 3.5, 4 hours. We were in an ambulance headed back to Eastern Maine Medical Center. He was having seizure after seizure after seizure. Within 4 hours, not one doctor that we saw at the emergency room could even correlate the vaccinations he had within 4 hours. It's not the vaccines, Holly. It's not the vaccines, and you need to let us do our job. And they had no explanation. Babies just sometimes have seizures. Take him home. As long as they're not long ones, we're going to put him on a bunch of medication. So we put him on phenobarbital. He did relatively well, still on target developmentally. Took him in for a flu vaccine because kids with neurological problems should have a flu vaccine. Well, he got the full dose of thimerosal at 11 months of age. Seizures that following week, despite being on phenobarbital. We go back, I say no more vaccines, and my son's pediatrician pointed in my face and said, if you don't vaccinate your son, he could get this, that, and the other and die from it. And he alluded to the fact that I was working for the contract agency through Child Protective Services. He bullied me into it. He has since apologized. He actually we changed pediatricians. He now works with the pediatrician that I drive to Bangor from Rangeley, just so I have a pediatrician that will allow me to not vaccinate my child further. We're in the vaccine injury compensation program. I'm on my second lawyer. As soon as they said autism, it's a whole different ballgame. My son has mitochondrial predisposition for not handling certain things because of a mitochondrial thing. I can't prove that without another $10,000 worth of genetic testing. I make $40,000 a year. I'm a single mom. I can't afford it. Until I can prove this, a doctor will not go to court and say that this happened because the court system treats doctors that say vaccine injuries happen very poorly. She told me she won't do it because they try to discredit whatever. Without a specific genetic test, again, $10,000, I am stuck. This LD 1076 is exactly what I needed 10 years ago when my son, or over 10 years ago now, when my son regressed. He is vaccine injured. Dora Mills says, it's a tragic thing, I'm sorry, but she's never once wanted to even look at my son's case. I've offered to organize many cases for her to look at. She wouldn't do it as the head of the CDC. Thank you again, and please, please take into consideration these bills that we've heard today. Let me have the right to opt out so I don't injure my other child.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, thank you for your testimony. Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you all for spending so much time with us today. You've all been so attentive and I really appreciate it. My name is Stephanie Erickson and I'm here to support LD 1076. When I received the first Gardasil HPV vaccine, I was not counseled on the possible side effects. I was not provided with a vaccine package insert or any other vaccine-related literature. Instead, I was coerced into receiving Gardasil by being led to believe it was for cancer prevention. And although the doctors knew I was a married woman with only one sexual partner, they withheld from me that I did not require an HPV vaccine, never disclosing that it was of no use to me at all because monogamy meant I was not at risk for contracting HPV. This would have significantly impacted my decision to receive the vaccine. 2 days after receiving the first HPV vaccine, I found myself in the emergency room, suffering from severe abdominal pain, and in the months that followed, I began to experience irregular menstrual cycles. While admitted to the emergency room, I informed the doctor that I had received an HPV vaccine 2 days prior. He never mentioned that my symptoms may have been an adverse reaction to the vaccine. When I received the second Gardasil HPV vaccine of the series, again without receiving any prior counsel or vaccine literature, I fainted in the doctor's office immediately following receiving the vaccine. The next day following vaccination, I lay helpless in bed with severe muscle and joint pain, unable to move my legs. I regained mobility in my legs, however my joint pain persisted. In the months that followed, I developed chronic joint pain, began taking various supplements and prescribed medications for joint pain, and was subsequently diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Never at any point before or after vaccination was I made aware that all my symptoms and medical issues that followed are listed on the Gardasil vaccine package insert as potential side effects of the vaccine. I was never informed about the existence of the vaccine adverse event reporting system or instructed on how to report my injuries. No doctor ever mentioned the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program or how to file a claim. I was never advised on where I could receive treatment for a vaccine injury. The current standard procedure for vaccination is unacceptable and does not follow suit with every other pharmaceutical prescription procedure. Unlike all other prescription medications, with vaccinations, patients receive little to no counsel. Unlike all other prescription pharmaceuticals, informational package inserts are not provided and contraindications are not discussed. We heard from doctors today that say they do it. I'm here to tell you that they're the exception, they are not the rule. Vaccinations are medicine. Why are we not treating them as such? These medications are given to our children as early as the first day of life. Informed choice is absolutely essential. Counsel on potential vaccination risk should be discussed prior to any individual receiving a vaccine, just like with any other doctor-prescribed pharmaceutical. We must hold vaccines to the same medical standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, additional testimony in support of this bill. Yeah, we didn't take a 7th inning stretch, so I can certainly understand why.
Big massage when you get home. All right. Hello again, members of the committee. To iterate, my name is Brooke Thompson, and I'm from Topsom, Maine, and we have 4 kids and 1 in the oven. I'm here to speak in support of LD 1076. When my husband and I first became parents, we were 24 and 25. We were young, we were just out of college, but not a clue how this whole parenting thing worked. Our first child, Quinn, was born in 2004. He was perfect and healthy, and we were so excited to start this new adventure. When he was a few days old, we dutifully started the doctor's appointments and rounds of recommended vaccines. Around the time Quinn had learned to sit up, we went in for his 6-month appointment, where he received the next set of vaccines on schedule. Soon after that appointment, I began to notice Quinn had a strong desire to bang his head very hard on everything. The walls, the floors, the furniture, us. It was not baby behavior I was familiar with, and it was very disconcerting. I was eager at our next doctor's appointment to mention this strange behavior, hoping that I would receive reassurance, possible answers as to why he had begun this harmful, repetitive behavior, and advice on what to do. Our pediatrician just chuckled and shrugged it off as a quirky developmental phase. As the days and weeks went by, and Quinn continued to bang his head over and over, I became convinced that there was a real reason. Our sweet, chubby 6-month-old had multiple bruises on his forehead every day, and when he started to bang his head, it was like he couldn't stop, and I actually had to pick him up and hold his hands. Around the same time, I had become interested in healthier ways to eat and live. We decided to temporarily stop vaccinating until we figured out what was going on with Quinn. It did not feel right putting more foreign chemicals into him when his little body seemed emotionally and physically overwhelmed. I really had no idea where to begin my research. I had no one to turn to about what we were feeling or going through. But because I'm a talker, I started talking, opening up to other moms, every mom I knew, about what we were experiencing, and it turned out we weren't alone. I felt surprised and disheartened to realize there was one common denominator amongst the stories, and it was vaccines. Because of this, I began researching vaccines extensively, and I realized that Quinn's behavior was a clear indication of a vaccine injury. Head banging is actually a pretty common reaction many children have after receiving vaccines, and it was also a foreshadowing of more serious injuries to come if we kept vaccinating. Because we love our son, we halted vaccinations permanently. Quinn continued to bang his head for a solid year after his initial 6-month vaccines. It took that long for his body to recover. My husband and I are happy to report that Quinn is a healthy, well-adjusted 10-year-old boy now. We do not believe every child has obvious or serious vaccine injuries, but it is clear that many, many do. Anyone may read the federal vaccine injury cases and discover this fact for themselves. I know that for our family, if we had a pediatrician that had been educated on common vaccine injuries or a place to go to receive help and information, that would have meant so much. We would not have felt helpless and ignored. We would have felt educated and empowered. And that is why we both support LD 1076. My husband and I fervently believe implementing a state office where doctors and families may go to find the most current vaccine information and support is exactly what Maine needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Seeing no questions, thank you. Additional testimony in support of this bill? Going once, going twice, sold. Testimony in opposition to this bill? You ready to close us out for the evening?
I certainly hope there's no one neither for nor against. For all of our.
There actually is.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. In that case, I'm the penultimate witness. Senator Brakey, Representative Gattine, members of the committee, thank you for your patience. I'm not a vaccine expert, and I'm not going to talk about vaccines, but I am going to talk about LD 1076. You've heard witnesses testify that it's duplicative of the federal system and duplicative of current educational requirements. Doctors have CME requirements that they have to meet. You've heard that a system like this would have probably a sizable fiscal note. It would be very expensive for the state. You know, I'm 65 years old, and one thing I've learned is life can be hard. It's been hard to hear the testimonies today from all these folks. And unfortunately, not all harm, not all tragedies are compensable. I spent 10 years as a workers' compensation hearing officer, having to turn down some people who had very serious harms, very serious injuries, but no connection to their work. And both of those were required in order for an injury to be compensable. We can have empathy, and we do have empathy. But when you look at cause and effect, you have to look at it from a scientific perspective. Science is a very disciplined method of thinking. It's very one step after the other. You exclude other possibilities. You know, we were talking about philosophy earlier. Well, there's a saying in the philosophy of logic, post hoc ergo propter hoc. After the thing, therefore because of the thing. And that's a prime example of a logic that is basically incorrect. Just because something happens after a thing doesn't necessarily mean that it happened because of the thing. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen because of the thing, but it doesn't establish, it doesn't prove that it happened because of the thing. There's a disease called mesothelioma. Its only known cause is exposure to asbestos. Mesothelioma shows up 20 years after exposure to asbestos. Has a 20-year incubation period, give or take. So just because something doesn't happen immediately after something else also doesn't mean it wasn't caused by that other thing. You have to take a disciplined look at the facts. You have to do double-blind studies where the researchers don't know anything except what they're doing. And there are later researchers who look at the data without the bias that somebody may have brought in if they knew that they were giving a placebo as opposed to an active agent, things like that. Read the studies. Look at the sample sizes. Look at how well controlled those studies were, and make your decisions on that basis. Finally, as you know, I represent the Maine Medical Association. I've heard a lot of horrible things about doctors today. And you will believe what you believe based on what you've heard, but I refuse to believe that so many doctors in this state are unfeeling, are horribly rude, are bullies, don't have the best interests of the patients in mind. And the same goes for nurse practitioners. Ask yourselves those things when you evaluate the testimony, please. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them or to get answers for you.
Representative Vashon?
With all the testimonies that we did hear today of children that allegedly became ill right after having a vaccination, have you ever had doctors come and be concerned that maybe it was caused by vaccination? What kind of discussions are doctors having when patients are showing up and saying, could there be a connection? Because what I'm hearing in this testimony from the patients is they feel hopeless from a consumer protection, and they talk of that theirs, I may have that wrong, but that there really isn't a reporting system. So whether it was related to vaccination or not, where do parents seek solace and comfort, and are doctors ever questioning, could there be a relationship?
Doctors are constantly questioning those things. That's why the research is done. You've probably heard today, I was in judiciary, so I don't know what happened in the earlier testimony, but you've probably heard about the study that was just published in the Journal of the American Medical Association within the last month or so, where they had a sample size of, it was either 65 or 95,000 test subjects. They do that research because they want to know, because they have the questions, and because they always question themselves. I've worked beside doctors as a nurse, and there's nobody I've ever worked with who questions themselves as much as doctors do, who question their own conclusions and question their own method of analysis to make sure that they're as certain as they possibly can be in the circumstance. I mean, are there human foibles? Yes, there are. Are there human failures? Of course. We all are heir to those issues.
Yes, Representative Basham.
Okay, so just in a follow-up to that, I'm hearing Representative Hymanson down there saying, of course, short of the fiscal note on this, this bill calling for more education, if there were, short of the fiscal note, do you think that this bill makes some sense, brought forward by consumers that have real concerns over figuring out whether there's a correlation to what happened to their child with vaccine or not?
We all want answers, we all want answers to those questions that puzzle us, especially to those questions that trouble us. This bill, I just get the feeling that the proponents of this bill won't rest until the education that it requires are exactly the points that they want to make, based on their particular view of the situation, regardless of any information to the contrary, regardless of any science to the contrary. We have a board of licensure in medicine that requires education of doctors, requires continuing education, requires testing periodically. A lot of people don't trust anybody in government. I heard that today people were saying the CDC is rife with scandal, and it may be true, I don't know. But at some point we have to trust somebody. When I cross the street, I have to trust that a driver